There's a moment that happens in every conflict. A split second where everything changes. Someone questions your intentions, challenges your character, twists your words into weapons against you. And in that moment, your entire body screams at you to defend yourself. Your heart races. Your palms sweat. Every fiber of your being demands that you explain, clarify, justify. You open your mouth, the words tumble out, and in that exact instant, you've already lost. Not because you were wrong. Not because your explanation wasn't valid. But because the very act of defending yourself is an admission of guilt in the court of power dynamics. I want you to imagine a different scenario. Someone launches an accusation at you. Something designed to wound, to provoke, to put you on trial. And instead of scrambling to defend yourself, you do something that sends a chill down their spine. You look them in the eye and say absolutely nothing. Not out of fear. Not because you don't have an answer. But because you refuse to play the game they're trying to force you into. This is not a strategy for the faint of heart. This is Machiavelli's darkest lesson, the one that separates those who are controlled by the opinions of others from those who cannot be touched. Today, we're going to explore why defending yourself is a trap, how manipulators use your need for validation against you, and most importantly, how to flip the entire power dynamic with a single move. But I need to warn you. Once you learn this, once you truly understand the mechanics of the strategy, you can never go back to being the person who begs to be understood. You will see the invisible strings that others use to control you, and you will cut them, one by one, until you stand completely free. Let's begin. Before we can understand why not defending yourself is so powerful, we need to understand why your instinct to defend is so deeply wired into your psychology. Close your eyes and go back to your childhood. You're 7 years old. A vase is broken. Your parent walks in, sees the shattered glass, and their eyes land on you. Did you do this? In that moment, what's your response? You immediately start explaining. No, I didn't touch it. The cat knocked it over. I was in the other room. You provide evidence, witnesses, alibis. Why? Because you learned very early that authority figures hold the power of judgment, and your safety depends on convincing them of your innocence. This is the origin of your defensive instinct. It's a survival mechanism from childhood that made perfect sense when you were small and powerless. The problem is, you grew up. You're no longer a child standing before an all-powerful parent. But your nervous system doesn't know that. When your boss questions your work, when your partner accuses you of being insensitive, when a stranger on social media calls you out, your brain doesn't see an equal. It sees that parent from childhood. It sees an authority figure whose approval you need to survive. So you defend yourself. You provide explanations. You show your work. You prove you're good. And in doing so, you unconsciously communicate something devastating. You're saying, you are the judge. I am the defendant. Please accept my plea so I can feel safe. This is what Machiavelli understood about power that most people never grasp. Power is not about being right. It's about who controls the frame of the interaction. When someone accuses you and you defend yourself, you've already accepted their frame. You've already agreed that they have the authority to judge you, that their opinion matters enough to warrant a response, that you need their approval to be okay. You've stepped into their courtroom. And once you're standing in front of that judge, you've already lost, regardless of how good your defense is. Let me give you a real example. Imagine you're in a meeting. A colleague says, I noticed you left early yesterday. Some of us have been picking up the slack while you disappear. The defensive response sounds like this: I didn't leave early. I stayed until 5:30. I had a doctor's appointment. I've been working extra hours all week. I even came in on Saturday. Notice what's happening here. You're providing evidence. You're explaining yourself. You're trying to prove you're not guilty of the crime they've implied. But here's what you've actually communicated. This person has the authority to question your schedule. Their perception of you matters more than your own knowledge of your work, and you need their approval to feel legitimate. The Machiavellian response is completely different. You look at them. You hold eye contact for a beat. And then you say one of two things. Either you say nothing at all, letting the silence do the work. Or you calmly redirect. What specifically about the project needs attention? Do you see the difference? In the first response, you're defending your character. In the second, you're refusing to accept the frame that your character is on trial. You're treating their personal attack as irrelevant noise and redirecting to what actually matters, the work. This is the first principle of Machiavelli's power-flipping strategy. Never accept the frame that someone else is trying to impose on you. The moment you defend yourself, you've accepted their right to prosecute you. But there's something even deeper happening here, something that touches on why this feels so difficult. When someone attacks you and you don't defend yourself, you're violating a social contract that's been in place since you were a child. You're refusing to play the game that everyone expects you to play. And that refusal creates a vacuum. A psychological space that most people find absolutely unbearable. This vacuum is where your power lives. Silence is the most underutilized weapon in human interaction. We live in a culture that's terrified of silence. We fill every gap with noise, with words, with explanations. We apologize for pauses. We over-explain to avoid awkwardness. But here's what Machiavelli knew. Silence is not the absence of power. Silence is power in its purest form. Let me paint a scenario for you. Someone says to you, "You're being incredibly selfish right now." This is a direct attack on your character. It's designed to make you feel guilty, to make you scramble to prove you're not selfish, to make you defend yourself. The old you would respond immediately. "No, I'm not. I helped you move last week. I covered your shift. I'm just tired right now." You're listing evidence like a lawyer in court. You're trying to prove you're a good person. Now imagine the Machiavellian approach. They say, "You're being incredibly selfish right now." You look at them. You don't blink. Your face remains completely neutral. And you say nothing. 3 seconds pass. 4 seconds. 5 seconds. In those 5 seconds, something extraordinary happens. The person who attacked you starts to feel uncomfortable. The silence creates pressure. They expected resistance. They expected you to push back, to defend yourself, to give them something to fight against. Instead, you've given them nothing. The human brain cannot tolerate this kind of silence in conflict. It signals danger. It signals that the social script has been torn up. It signals that you're not playing by the rules they expected. Usually, within those 5 to 10 seconds, they'll speak again. "I mean, you're not always selfish, but just right now, you seem." They start backtracking. They start defending their accusation. They start explaining themselves to fill the void you've created. Do you see what just happened? The power flipped. They attacked you, expecting you to defend. You refused to engage. And now they're the ones feeling defensive. They're the ones scrambling to explain themselves to your silence. This is what I call the mirror technique. When you stay silent, you become a mirror. Their attack bounces back at them. They see their own aggression reflected in your calm, and it makes them uncomfortable. It makes them question themselves. Why am I attacking this person who seems so unmoved? Maybe I'm being unreasonable. You didn't have to say a single word. Your silence did all the work. But here's the crucial part. This only works if your silence comes from a place of genuine detachment. If you're silent because you're scared, if you're silent because you don't know what to say, if you're silent but your body language is screaming discomfort, it won't work. In fact, it will make you look weak. The silence that holds power is the silence of someone who simply doesn't feel the need to respond. It's the silence of a person who knows that this accusation is just noise, and noise doesn't deserve a response. This is where the internal work comes in. You have to genuinely stop caring whether this person understands you or approves of you. Not in a bitter, resentful way, but in a sovereign way. In a way that says, your opinion of me is none of my business. Machiavelli wrote extensively about the importance of appearing unmoved by attacks. He understood that the ruler who can be provoked is a ruler who can be controlled. The same applies to you in your daily life. Every time you defend yourself, you're showing your attacker exactly where your buttons are. You're giving them a map to your insecurities. Oh, they got defensive when I questioned their intelligence. Let me file that away for future use. Silence reveals nothing. It is a fortress with no doors. They can circle it all they want, but they can't find a way in. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. But what if staying silent makes me look guilty? What if people think I have no answer? This is your childhood programming talking. This is the part of you that still believes you need the approval of authority figures to be okay. The truth is, guilty people defend themselves desperately. Innocent people who know their worth don't feel the need to prove anything. When you stay silent in the face of an accusation, you're communicating something profound. I know who I am. Your accusation doesn't change that. You can believe whatever you want. This is the energy of a king. A king doesn't defend himself to his subjects. Not because he's arrogant, but because he doesn't derive his sense of self from their opinions. Now, silence is powerful, but it's not the only tool in the Machiavellian arsenal. Sometimes, the situation requires words. But never defensive words. Never explanations. Instead, you use a technique from dark psychology called agree and amplify. This technique is so counterintuitive that when you first hear it, you'll think it can't possibly work. But it's devastatingly effective. Here's how it works. When someone accuses you of something, instead of denying it, you agree with them. But you don't just agree. You exaggerate their accusation to the point of absurdity. You amplify it until it becomes a caricature. Let's say someone accuses you of being obsessed with money. You're so greedy. All you care about is money. The defensive response is predictable. No, I'm not greedy. I just want financial security. I give to charity. I'm actually very generous. Boring. Weak. Predictable. You're defending yourself, which means you've accepted the frame that greed is something to be ashamed of and that their opinion of you matters. The Machiavellian response using agree and amplify sounds like this. You're absolutely right. I actually swim in a vault of gold coins like Scrooge McDuck every Tuesday. It's terrible for my back, but the feeling of cold metal is worth it. You say this with a completely straight face or with a slight, amused smirk. What have you just done? Multiple things simultaneously. First, you've refused to be insulted. Second, you've demonstrated that you're not insecure about the topic they're attacking you on. Third, you've turned their serious accusation into a joke, which reframes the entire interaction. Fourth, You've established that you're the one who controls the reality of this conversation, not them. This creates massive cognitive dissonance in the attacker. They wanted to hurt you. They wanted to see you squirm. Instead, you've taken their weapon and started juggling with it. You've shown that their attack has no power over you whatsoever. Let me give you another example. Someone says, "You don't care about anyone but yourself. You're so selfish." The defensive response, "That's not true. I care about my family. I volunteer. I help my friends all the time." The agree and amplify response, "You've discovered my secret. I'm actually plotting to become the world's first professional narcissist. I'm working on it full-time. I'll add you to the list of people I care about next year if you submit your application early." This is not sarcasm. Sarcasm has a bitter edge to it. This is something else. This is amused mastery. It's the tone you'd use with a toddler who's throwing a tantrum. You're not angry at them. You're not hurt by them. You're simply amused by the drama they're creating. This state of amused mastery is the ultimate high-status position. It communicates that you are so secure in who you are that their attacks literally cannot touch you. You're not even taking them seriously enough to be offended. The key to making this work is your delivery. You cannot be defensive. You cannot be angry. You cannot be bitter. You have to genuinely find the accusation amusing because you know it's not true, or because even if there's a grain of truth to it, you've already accepted that part of yourself. This brings us to a crucial insight. Agree and amplify only works if you've done the shadow work. If someone calls you greedy and you secretly fear you might be greedy, you won't be able to pull this off. Your voice will shake. Your energy will betray you. But if you've looked at yourself honestly and you know who you are, flaws and all, then their accusations become funny. Because you know the truth, and their opinion doesn't change that truth. Machiavelli understood that the most powerful leaders are those who cannot be emotionally manipulated. And the way you become immune to emotional manipulation is by accepting every part of yourself, including the parts that society says you should be ashamed of. When you've integrated your shadow, when you've owned your capacity for selfishness, for cruelty, for all the human darkness we all carry, then nobody can use those things against you. Someone calls you selfish? Sometimes I am. So are you. So is everyone. What's your point? This is not about being a bad person. It's about refusing to play the game of moral perfectionism that manipulators use to control you. Now we're going to go even deeper into Machiavelli's strategy. We're going to learn how to not just deflect attacks, but to completely flip the power dynamic by turning the interrogation back on your attacker. Every conversation has a hidden structure. In conflict, there's usually someone playing the role of judge and someone playing the role of defendant. The judge asks questions. Why did you do that? What were you thinking? How could you? The defendant answers. And here's the crucial insight. Whoever is asking the questions holds the power. Whoever is answering is losing status with every word. Your instinct when attacked is to answer their questions, to provide explanations, to justify your actions. But the moment you start answering their questions, you've accepted the role of defendant. You've agreed that they're the judge. The Machiavellian move is to refuse this role entirely and instead become the judge yourself. You do this by answering their question with a question of your own, or by analyzing their behavior instead of defending yours. Here's an example. Someone says to you, "Why are you always so late?" The defensive response is to provide reasons. There was traffic. My alarm didn't go off. I had to take my kid to school. But watch what happens when you flip it. Why does my arrival time affect your mood so deeply? Suddenly, the entire conversation has shifted. We're no longer talking about whether you're late. We're talking about their emotional reaction to your lateness. We're talking about their need for control, their anxiety, their expectations. You've put the spotlight back on them. And this is deeply uncomfortable for someone who was trying to put you on trial. They might respond, "I'm not in a bad mood. You're being ridiculous." And you respond, "What makes you feel the need to use labels like ridiculous when someone asks you a question?" Do you see what's happening? You're psychoanalyzing them in real time. You're treating them like a specimen to be studied, rather than an authority figure to be answered to. This is infuriating to a manipulator because it completely reverses the power structure they were trying to create. Here are some phrases that act as shields in these situations. It's interesting that you perceive it that way. What makes you think that? Does saying that make you feel better? You seem very invested in this. Why is that? Help me understand why this matters so much to you. Each of these phrases acknowledges that the other person has spoken, but it doesn't accept the content of what they've said as valid. It's a boundary, a force field. You're saying, "This is your perception, your emotion, your problem, not mine." This is not just a conversational tactic. This is a spiritual stance. It's the realization that other people's perceptions of you are genuinely none of your business. Their anger belongs to them. Their disappointment is their responsibility to manage, not yours. When you defend yourself, you're trying to carry their emotional baggage for them. You're trying to fix their feelings about you. But their feelings are not your responsibility. Let them carry their own weight. Machiavelli wrote that a prince must know when to be a lion and when to be a fox. The lion uses force. The fox uses cunning. Flipping the interrogation is pure fox energy. You're not fighting them head-on. You're using their own momentum against them, redirecting their attack back at its source. There's an ancient martial art called Aikido where you never meet force with force. Instead, you redirect your opponent's energy, using their own attack to unbalance them. This is conversational Aikido. They push, you sidestep, and they stumble forward. The beauty of this technique is that it makes you seem unreasonable to them, but completely reasonable to any observer. If someone is screaming at you and you calmly ask, "Why does this upset you so much?" you look composed and they look unhinged. This is reputation management at its finest. You're letting them destroy their own credibility while you maintain yours. Now I'm going to teach you the most counterintuitive move in the entire Machiavellian playbook. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is agree with your attacker. But not the way you think. This is not the agreement of submission. This is not admitting you're wrong when you're right. This is something else entirely. This is what I call the agreement of the abyss. Imagine someone is attacking you verbally. They're listing your flaws, your mistakes, everything you've ever done wrong. They want a fight. They want you to push back so they can push harder. And instead, you look them in the eye and say very calmly, "You're right." And then you stop talking. The attacker is completely disarmed. They were expecting resistance. They were expecting you to fight back. They were preparing their next attack based on your defense. But you gave them nothing to fight against. This is called the fogging technique in psychology. When you throw a rock into fog, what happens? Nothing. No thud. No bounce. The rock just disappears. When you agree with someone who's attacking you, you steal their momentum. They're pushing against a door, expecting it to be locked. When you open the door, they fall on their face. But here's the crucial nuance. You agree with the factual content of their criticism without accepting the shame or the identity they're trying to attach to it. There's a massive difference between admitting a mistake and accepting a character assassination. Example: someone says, "You messed up this report. You're incompetent." The defensive response is, "I'm not incompetent. The data was incomplete. I was rushed." The power move is, "You're right. The report has errors. I'll fix it. Notice what you did and didn't address. You acknowledged the factual mistake, but you completely ignored the word incompetent. You didn't accept that label. You didn't defend against it. You treated it as if it wasn't even said." This requires tremendous confidence. Only a person who is genuinely secure in their competence can admit a mistake this easily. Insecure people fight to the death to avoid admitting any error because they believe one mistake defines their entire worth. Secure people say, "Oops," and move on. By agreeing with the facts but ignoring the insult, you've done something brilliant. You've shown that you can take responsibility without taking on shame. You've proven that you don't need to be perfect to be worthy. And you've made the person hurling insults look petty and hysterical by comparison. Machiavelli wrote about the importance of disarming your enemies. If you lay down your sword, they look foolish holding theirs. When you agree with legitimate criticism, you take away their weapon. What can they do now? They already said you messed up, and you agreed. The fight is over. They have nothing left to attack. This doesn't mean you become a doormat. This doesn't mean you accept abuse. It means you separate facts from emotions, mistakes from identity, and you only engage with what's real. If someone says, "You hurt my feelings when you said X," you can say, "You're right. I did say that. I can see why that would hurt." You've validated their experience without necessarily agreeing that you were wrong to say it. You've acknowledged reality without accepting blame. This is the agreement of power. It's the agreement of someone who is so secure in themselves that they don't need to be right all the time. They don't need to win every argument. They can acknowledge when they've made a mistake and move forward without it destroying their sense of self. The person who cannot admit they're ever wrong is fragile. The person who can admit it easily is strong. We've covered a lot of ground today. We've explored why your instinct to defend yourself is a trap rooted in childhood conditioning. We've learned how silence can be the most powerful response. We've discovered how to use agree and amplify to turn accusations into jokes. We've mastered the art of flipping interrogations back on attackers. And we've understood the paradoxical power of strategic agreement. But none of this matters if it stays theoretical. Knowledge without application is just entertainment. So I'm going to give you a challenge. A 7-day experiment that will fundamentally change how you move through the world. For the next 7 days, you're going to play a game. The game is called No Defense. Here are the rules. No matter what happens, no matter how small the accusation or criticism, you are completely forbidden from explaining yourself, justifying your actions, or defending your character. If you're late, you say, "I'm late." You do not give the reason. If you spill coffee, you say, "I spilled the coffee." You do not blame the slippery mug. If someone misunderstands you, you let them misunderstand you. You do not rush to clarify. This is going to be uncomfortable. Excruciatingly uncomfortable. You're going to feel the urge to fix people's perceptions of you. You're going to feel the urge to be understood, to be seen as good, to manage how others view you. That urge is going to feel like fire under your skin. Let it burn. Sit in that fire. Watch that need to explain yourself, that need to be validated, that need to be the good guy. Watch it desperately claw at you. and then watch it burn to ash. Because on the other side of that fire is freedom. Real freedom. The freedom of a person who no longer needs permission to exist. The freedom of someone who knows who they are, regardless of what anyone else thinks. During these 7 days, pay attention to how people respond to you. You're going to see confusion at first. Then you're going to see something interesting, respect. People are going to start treating you differently. They're going to stop testing you. They're going to stop trying to manipulate you. Because manipulators feed on reactions. They feed on your need to be understood. When you stop providing that food, they move on to easier prey. You're also going to notice a strange magnetism developing around you. People are drawn to certainty. And nothing communicates certainty more powerfully than a person who doesn't feel the need to explain why they exist. This challenge is not about becoming cold. It's not about becoming arrogant or uncaring. It's about reclaiming your energy. Every time you defend yourself, you're leaking power. You're giving away pieces of your soul to everyone who demands an explanation from you. This challenge is about plugging those leaks. You're stepping out of the role of the child who needs approval and into the role of the sovereign who grants approval. You're no longer playing the game of, please like me, please understand me, please accept me. You're playing a completely different game. The game of, I am who I am. Take it or leave it. Machiavelli understood something that most people spend their entire lives never learning. The world respects strength, not explanation. The world respects boundaries, not flexibility. The world respects those who know their own worth, not those who constantly need others to validate it. When you stop defending yourself, you're making a declaration. You're saying, I am complete. I am whole. I don't need your approval to know who I am. Your opinion of me is your business. My reality is mine. This is not easy. If it were easy, everyone would do it. But most people will spend their entire lives as emotional puppets, dancing on the strings of other people's opinions. Most people will defend themselves until their last breath, never realizing that every defense is an admission of weakness. But you're not most people. You're here because some part of you is tired of performing. Some part of you is exhausted from trying to be understood by people who don't want to understand you. Some part of you knows there's a different way to move through the world. This is that way. This is Machiavelli's secret. This is the power flip that changes everything. So take the challenge. 7 days. No defense. No explanation. No justification. Just silence, strategic agreement, or deflection. Watch what happens. Watch how the world changes when you stop trying to control what it thinks of you. And if this philosophy resonates with something deep inside you, if it touches that part of your soul that's been waiting for permission to stop apologizing for existing, then you know what to do. Don't just watch this video and forget about it. Implement it. Test it. See if it works in your life. Because in the end, Machiavelli's greatest lesson wasn't about manipulation or cruelty. It was about understanding power. Real power doesn't come from forcing others to see you as you want to be seen. Real power comes from being so grounded in who you are that you don't need others to see you at all. You already are who you are. The question is, when will you stop defending that truth and start living it?